Hey everyone, Professor Lees here. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the guidelines for major essay project number 1. So these are the guidelines that I want you all to strive to incorporate into your first draft. So right from the very beginning of composing your essay, composing the essay itself, you've already completed the proposal, but as you begin working on the draft itself, try your best to incorporate these different guidelines into the draft, because in some way each of these guidelines is tied to one or more of the criteria in the rubric for major essay project number 1. And so the rubric is what I'm going to use to assess your polished draft. And so if we're trying to make sure that we meet or exceed most, if not all, of the standards for this essay project, we want to start from the very beginning, striving to build these things in. So let me go ahead and read through this. I think I'm gonna actually break this video into a couple of smaller videos. So this is part 1. So watch all of part 1 and then pick up part 2 when part 1 is over, when you're ready to look at part 2, and then part 3. I think there'll only be 3. So here I am riffing right on the video itself. So anyway, all right, well, let's jump into this. Keep your central objective at the front of your mind as you work on this essay. Your objective is to conduct a rhetorical analysis of your selected text, the object of study, not to argue for or against the opinion or opinions expressed in your selected text, or to write an essay on a general issue or topic. As Lunsford and Ruskovich explain, the work of a rhetorical analysis is the close, critical reading of a text to figure out and sometimes criticize how it functions on a rhetorical level. They continue, you will read or view your selected text critically, examining how all its elements influence an intended audience, how they build agreement or adherence to an idea, or fail to do so. How are the rhetorical elements we have been reading and learning about from Everything's an Argument working together, or in some cases not working together, to help the text get its point across effectively or ineffectively? So let me just clarify this a little bit, just to make sure that we're all clear on what we're trying to accomplish with this essay project. So this is what we call a rhetorical analysis. So as we've read from chapter 6, entitled Rhetorical Analysis, what we're striving to do when we're conducting this style of essay is we're not arguing for or against a specific opinion, and we're not trying to inform a reader on a general topic or expose some kind of issue or express our opinion on a topic. What we're trying to do is examine a very specific text. Okay, so remember, a text is anything that is the object of study. So anything that we can analyze when we are studying it or when we are analyzing it, in that process, it becomes a text. So, for example, a common text that we encounter is written words on a page or a screen. However, that's not the only classification of a text, right? So if we can study anything, so just look around you right now, wherever you're seated, anything that you see before you can become a text if you're trying to understand it on a deeper level. Okay, so just want to make that very clear. So what you're trying to do, so if your selected text is a magazine article, for example, or a newspaper article, perhaps it's a TV commercial or an advertisement you found on Instagram, or some other kind of text that has some sort of opinion being expressed. You're not trying to argue for or against that opinion, or talk more about that opinion, or talk more about that issue, or do a bunch of research on the issue and try to, put all that stuff together for your readers. What you're trying to do is break down how well that text is working on a rhetorical level. Okay, so if you select some sort of written text, like an article or an essay, for example, what you're trying to do is examine how well the author is getting their point across on a rhetorical level. So how well is ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos, as well as some of the other rhetorical considerations that we've been reading about. How well are all of those things working together in order for this writer to get their position across to their audience? Okay, so that's what you're trying to do. So you're trying to examine how those inner workings are indeed working, or in some cases not working. However, in most cases, you're probably going to be examining why you think the text does do a good job getting its point across. Okay, so let's continue on here. Use the Guide to Writing a Rhetorical Analysis on pages 122 through 127 of Everything's an Argument to assist you in your analytical efforts. In addition to the strategies outlined in Chapter 6, Rhetorical Analysis, use these guidelines below to help you with the composition of your essay. Now this right here, it says, I say remember, and so I probably should have revised that, but because I don't think I've spoken to this yet. But this is in the rubric, and it's something that we're striving to accomplish in this essay. In order to ensure that we actually understand what these rhetorical concepts mean, ethos, pathos, logos, and kairos, I do not want you to actually use those words in your essay. Holy crap, how are we supposed to talk about those things without using their names? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. What you are then challenged to do to ensure that you actually understand what ethos means, you're going to talk about what the concept is itself. So ethos pertains to credibility, building connection, establishing common ground, emphasizing shared values. All of those things fall within the realm of ethos. So instead of saying, oh, this is an example of ethos in the text, you're going to say so-and-so builds credibility here, or so-and-so helps to establish a connection to their audience. So-and-so demonstrates their trustworthiness. Whatever it might be, whatever concept it is that you're trying to explain, you're going to actually talk about what the concept is itself versus using its name, okay? So the reason I want you to not use these words in your essay is to ensure that you actually understand what the concepts are. And this is something that I've just learned over the years of my assigning rhetorical analysis type style essays to my students. Typically, if we're using those words, we're not actually demonstrating that we know what they mean. So that's why. And that is one of the standards in the rubric. So keep that in mind. Like I said earlier, these different guidelines are in some way tied to at least a single standard or multiple standards within the rubric. So it's in your best interest to incorporate these things in. Okay, so let's continue on here. So the title of your essay. So even though you're still working on your first drafts, or if you're rewatching this and you're currently working on your polished draft, whatever the case is, we want to make sure that we're giving our essay a creative title that alludes to the focus of your analysis, okay? Don't just call it Essay 1, don't just say MEP, don't just say rhetorical analysis, don't just steal the title of the text that you're analyzing. No, you want to try to come up with your own title that is going to allude to the focus of your analysis, okay? So when your reader reads your title, they should know, oh, this is an essay about such and such. Cool. Now, a way that you're going to help your reader understand that is to, in addition to being creative with the way that you create your title, you're going to want to follow this title::subtitle format. And this is a convention of academic writing, and this is a way for us to tell what a piece of writing is focused on more specifically. So what these things are, the title is a memorable phrase that in some way relates to your analysis. So in this case, it could be a phrase that you perhaps quote from the text that you're analyzing. Perhaps it's a phrase that encapsulates the gist of that text that you're analyzing. Whatever it might be, just make sure that it's a memorable phrase that somehow relates to the analysis, okay? So then the subtitle is what elaborates on that title. So the subtitle is what's really going to give your readers an indication of what your essay is focused on. So the subtitle provides further detail or explanation of the title to give your readers an indication of what your essay is about. And so I have an example here So this example, in previous classes, I would show a TED Talk or use a TED Talk as an example of a text to analyze. And in this case, this example, changing the composition of the soil. So this is a title, and the phrase here that I'm using for the title, it hints to something that is in this specific TED Talk that this title is referring to. The speaker actually says we have to change the composition of the soil, and that means something to his overall point that he's making in his TED Talk. And so I decided, okay, for this example, changing the composition of the soil. Hey, that's kind of a catchy title. Okay, all right. So then the subtitle here, examining the rhetorical flourishes in Ron Finley's A Guerrilla Gardener in South Central LA. So his TED Talk is called A Guerrilla Gardener in South Central LA. The speaker is Ron Finley. Now, if you were to read this, changing the composition of the soil, examining the rhetorical flourishes in Ron Finley's A Guerrilla Gardener in South Central LA. Dang, now I know. Okay, this is going to be a rhetorical analysis of Ron Finley's TED Talk. Awesome. Now I get that, and I can decide if that's something I want to read as a reader, all right? So I want you all to get in the habit of doing this. This is how I want us to create our titles, not only for Major Essay Project 1, but from now on for the remaining essays that we'll complete in this class, and hopefully the remaining essays that you write in your beautiful, productive lives that you will lead after our class is over. So anyway, use a title. Don't squander a title. They're important. They matter. Okay, so one more item that I will cover in this first video, and then I'll go ahead and end it and begin part 2, is how to create your introduction to this essay project. All right. So many of you are coming from English 1. You had English 1 in the past, maybe English 105 as well. Or perhaps you even are coming right out of high school, might be the case. Or perhaps not. Maybe it's been a while since you've been in any English course, and that's okay. But we probably have ideas about what an introduction should do, and most likely those ideas come from the 5-paragraph essay structure. Now, in this class, and I hope in every other class that you ever take that involves writing, you will never have to write a 5-paragraph essay again. We're way smarter than that 5-paragraph essay. So we want to write in such a way that's going to reflect the complexity of our thoughts, right? So do not follow the conventions of the 5-paragraph essay structure. Avoid having a, quote, hook at the very start of your essay. In other words, do not begin your essay with a question, a startling statistic, or a generic quotation. Okay, so those are the 3 main ways that we were taught to create some kind of hook to grab your reader's attention, your audience's attention. And quite frankly, that hook is a very corny thing. It's just really corny. It's cheesy. It doesn't actually hook your readers. And like I said earlier, you all are smarter than that. And these are more complex ideas, and we need to be able to reflect the complexity of our ideas. And we also want to treat our readers as complex thinkers, right? Our readers are smarter than the 5-paragraph essay as well, okay? So don't begin with some kind of question. Have you ever wondered the rhetorical effectiveness of such and such text? Nobody's ever wondered that, so don't ask, okay? Or this startling statistic. No one has ever wondered the rhetorical effectiveness of such and such. What a travesty. Oh my gosh. Don't say that. And then a generic quotation. Benjamin Franklin once said, you just Google some question that you're trying, or some quotation that you're trying to include at the start. It's corny. Don't do it, all right? So what I want you to do then is get to the point, all right? There's no need for general preambles or sweeping generalizations about your text subject matter. Focus right in on the key details of your selected text so that your readers have a good idea of what it is before you begin explaining your analysis. Okay, so just right from the very beginning, introduce us to the text. So if you're analyzing a TV commercial that you watched over, while you're watching the Super Bowl, that was when it first appeared, introduce us that way. And, on February 12th, 2023, during the Super Bowl, so-and-so aired their commercial about blah, blah, blah. All right, cool. You introduced it right away. Now we know that's the thing we're focused on. You're not, starting off with, since the beginning of time, people have always striven to convince others through ethos, pathos. Oh, we're not going to use those words, but you get the point I'm making. Don't start off with a a big giant, sweeping introduction. Just zero right into the text, okay? So if you're introducing us to a magazine article, right away, give us the title, author, what it's about, boom, right in there. Don't start off with some big giant introduction. So here, provide a brief but detailed summary or description of your selected text. And I would say approximately 250 words in length, 1 to 2 paragraphs. That's a good ballpark. So think about these questions here. What is the text's overall message or point? So that would be something that you would want to include in your brief but detailed summary of that text or description of the text. How does the text support this message or point? So what are the main reasons or features? You don't need to go into every single small detail. You just need to give us the main features of it, so that if I've never watched this TV commercial, or if I've never seen that photograph, or if I've never read that article or seen the Twitter tweet or whatever it might be that you're focused on, me as a reader, I'm not going to be lost. I'll be able to follow along because I'm like, okay, I get the general idea of this. Okay, cool. Now I can go along with your analysis. And then, so at the end of your introduction, so if your introduction is, 1 to 2 paragraphs, in some cases it might even be 3 paragraphs, just at the end of your introduction, you'll want to include your working thesis. And your thesis is your claim about the effectiveness of your selected text. And because we're avoiding the conventions of the 5-paragraph essay, do not create one of those listing thesis statements that you learned in the 5-paragraph essay, where you just say, here's my position because point A, point B, and point C. No, instead you'd want to have one overarching umbrella reason. So in essence, what's the main reason you think the text is effective or ineffective? Give us that. Now, there's going to be a future video that explains how to create an effective 2-part thesis statement, so sit tight for that. But for now, as we're working on this, avoid that 5-paragraph essay listing thesis, but just give us, whether or not you think the text is effective and what's the main reason for thinking that. So I have an example here using another TED Talk. So this is a thesis statement, an example thesis statement from a hypothetical essay about this particular TED Talk from a guy named Tim Urban. So let me read this for you. Tim Urban's presentation on procrastination is effective because of his impressive and humorous capability to play with his audience's expectations. So in this case, here's my position on whether or not I think that the text is effective. In this example, I say it is effective, and then because. So that's my main reason, because of his impressive and humorous capability to play with his audience's expectations. So that's what I think makes his speech so effective, or his TED Talk so effective. And so in this example, then the rest of my essay would be elaborating on that, why I think his ability to play with his audience's expectations is what makes it so effective. And I break that down. All right, y'all. Well, this is going to conclude part 1 of this video series. So please stay tuned for part 2. I'll see you on the other side.